The plates clattered louder than the laughter. Steam rose from the sink like a weary ghost. And the old man behind it, bent, gray-haired, sleeves rolled to the elbows, said nothing as a manager's voice cut through the noise. "Move faster, old-timer. You think we're running a charity here." The diner fell silent for half a heartbeat. The hiss of the coffee machine filled the pause. A waitress froze mid-pour, her eyes darting to the man at the sink. The old man looked up. His eyes were calm, steady eyes that had seen boardrooms and battlefields, success and silence. But no one here knew that. No one knew the dishwasher was Daniel Hartwell, a billionaire testing the soul of his own company. And tonight, he was about to discover just how dirty success could look when it forgot compassion. The Silver Fork Diner sat at the edge of town, wedged between a flickering gas station sign and an empty motel whose vacancy light never turned off. The air smelled of burnt toast, fryer oil, and quiet disappointment. Inside, the neon buzzed faintly above rows of cracked red vinyl seats. Coffee stains marked the counter like old tattoos. The jukebox in the corner blinked without sound, a relic of a better decade. It was the kind of place that lived off routine. The same customers, the same orders, the same tired apologies. Clarissa, the night waitress, moved through the haze of steam and cigarette smoke with quiet grace. Her uniform was clean but faded, her eyes kind but heavy. She was the kind of person who said no problem even when it was. Lewis, the short-order cook, worked the grill with tired precision. Sweat beaded along his forehead as he flipped another patty, his hands steady even as exhaustion crept behind his eyes. And then there was Rick, the manager. Slick-back hair, cheap tie, a smirk that came before every insult. He spoke as if volume made him right. "Clarissa," he barked. "Table 3's been waiting 15 minutes. What are you doing? Writing poetry." Clarissa's voice was soft but even. "Just refilling their coffee, sir." "Don't, sir me. Just move." The words hung in the air like greasy smoke. Rick didn't look at her long enough to see the way she swallowed her pride. At the sink, Daniel quietly stacked around chip plates. The hot water stung his hands, but he didn't flinch. He had built a fortune believing that dignity mattered more than profit. Yet, in places like this, his places, that belief had thinned to something fragile. That's why he was here. Undercover. Unnoticed. Watching. A sharp crash broke his thought. A plate hitting the floor. Shattered porcelain skittered under the prep table. Rick spun around instantly, his voice snapping like a whip. "Unbelievable. Old man, that's coming out of your paycheck. Oh wait, do you even have one?" A few teenagers sitting by the window snickered, uncertain whether they were supposed to laugh. Lewis turned his back. Clarissa's eyes flicked toward the sink, guilt written in the furrow of her brow. Daniel knelt and began picking up the pieces. The fragments reflected the harsh fluorescent light like small, trembling mirrors. "I'll replace it," he said quietly. Rick stepped closer, his breath thick with cheap coffee and arrogance. "You'll replace it? With what? Your pension. You don't belong here. Old man. Retire before you slow the rest of us down." Daniel didn't answer. He simply gathered the last shard and set it gently on the counter. Steam rose again from the sink, clouding the small window above it. Beyond the glass, the night looked soft and unreachable, like a world that had forgotten kindness. Clarissa placed a mug of coffee beside him, her voice a whisper meant for no one else. "Don't let him get to you, okay? His worse when the owner's around." Daniel gave a faint smile, the kind that held patience and sorrow all at once. "Is that so?" he said quietly. She nodded, not realizing the irony of her words. Because the owner she spoke of was standing right beside her, his hands rolled with soap and silence. Outside, thunder rolled across the horizon. The lights flickered once. And somewhere deep inside that little diner, something began to shift, something that would soon turn the night upside down. The storm outside deepened until the diner's windows rattled in their frames. Inside, everything felt tighter. Air, tempers, patience. Rick's voice filled every corner like static. He prowled between tables, straightening salt shakers that didn't need straightening, sighing dramatically whenever Clarissa took too long. Lewis kept his head down, flipping bacon, pretending not to hear. Daniel stayed at the sink. He worked with measured quiet, rinsing plates as if they were delicate things worth saving. Every few minutes, Clarissa caught herself glancing toward him. There was something strange about the way he carried himself, how his movements were slow but certain, how nothing seemed to shake him. When Rick barked, Daniel simply listened. When Rick mocked him, he smiled faintly, like someone who had seen worse and survived. At one point, Rick leaned against the counter beside him. "You worked anywhere before this?" he asked, his tone half suspicious, half condescending. Daniel wiped his hands on a towel. "Here and there." "Doing what?" He looked at the reflection of the overhead light in the sink. "Managing people." Rick snorted. "Managing? You? Sure you did." He walked away, still laughing. Clarissa caught Daniel's eye and shook her head slightly, an apology for a world she couldn't fix. He nodded once, telling her it was all right. Hours passed. The diner emptied except for a few truckers sheltering from the rain. Lightning flashed through the blinds, painting everyone in brief white light. At 2 a.m., a delivery arrived, 2 crates of frozen meat and a box of produce. Lewis hurried to the back door, but Rick stopped him. "Let the old man handle it. He needs the exercise." Daniel looked up. "It's all right," he said, wiping his hands. "I can manage." The alley was slick with rain. He carried each box carefully, though his back ached. Behind him, he heard Rick's voice again, loud enough for the others. "Look at him. Probably broke, probably alone. That's what happens when you waste your life doing nothing." Clarissa winced. Lewis muttered something under his breath in Spanish that sounded like a prayer. When Daniel came back inside, dripping wet, Clarissa hurried over with a towel. "You shouldn't have to take that," she whispered. He smiled gently. "Everyone has to take something. The question is what they learn from it." Rick rolled his eyes. "Say the philosophy, Socrates. You've got dishes piling up." But Daniel's words lingered. They were stuck in Clarissa's chest like a warm ember she didn't want to lose. Moments later, the bell over the door jingled. A young man, maybe 20, walked in wearing a hoodie soaked through. He looked nervous, eyes darting between tables. "Bathrooms for customers only," Rick snapped. I just needed a place to stay dry for a minute," the boy said. Rick crossed his arms. "Then buy something." Clarissa reached for a menu. "I can make him a coffee. On me." Rick shot her a glare sharp enough to cut. "You'll pay for it. Then." She hesitated, then nodded. "I will." Daniel watched the exchange quietly, his jaw tightening. The boy shuffled to a corner booth. Clarissa poured a cup of coffee and set it in front of him without another word. As she turned away, Rick's voice sliced through the room again. "You know why people walk all over you, Clarissa? Because you invite it." The sound of the rain deepened. Nobody moved. Daniel placed the last plate on the rack, dried his hands, and looked at Rick. For the first time, his voice carried a thread of authority, not loud, but certain. "Maybe kindness isn't weakness," he said softly. "Maybe it's the only thing keeping this place human." Rick smirked. "What do you know about running a business?" Daniel held his gaze. "More than you think." Something in the way he said it made Rick falter for half a second, but arrogance quickly reclaimed him. He turned away, muttering under his breath. Clarissa felt something change in the air. The quiet man at the sink was no longer invisible. By 3 a.m., the diner was a hollow echo of clinking cups and thunder. Rick sat in his office at the back, scrolling through his phone, muttering complaint to himself about lazy staff and low tips. Out front, Clarissa cleaned the counter while Daniel dried the last tray of dishes. "You don't talk like most people who end up here," she said finally. He smiled. "Maybe I just listen, Mo." She studied him, curiosity overcoming caution. "You remind me of someone I used to work for. He ran a company downtown. Said every person deserved respect, no matter what job they had." "Smart man," Daniel said. "He was," she sighed, "but the company was sold last year. The new owners cut staff, raised prices, and never looked back." Daniel's eyes softened. "And yet you stayed kind." She shrugged. "Someone has to be." Before he could answer, Rick's voice boomed from the office. "Clarissa, in here, now." She disappeared behind the door. Daniel heard the rise of Rick's voice, angry, clipped. Then Clarissa's smaller one, a apologetic. Moments later, she came out blinking fast, wiping her eyes. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't need to. Minutes later, the young man in the hoodie approached the counter, holding the empty cup. "Thank you," he murmured to Clarissa, "for the coffee." Rick appeared again, blocking him. "You done? Then get out." The boy hesitated. "I just wanted to say." "Out!" Rick barked. Clarissa flinched. The boy dropped a few coins on the counter and left into the rain. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Lewis muttered, "One day, karma will clock in, amigo." Rick glared. "What was that?" "Nothing." The storm outside cracked so loudly the lights flickered again. The neon sign buzzed and died, leaving the room in half-darkness. Rick cursed under his breath. "Great. Just great." He turned to Daniel. "You, check the breaker. It's in the basement." Clarissa started to protest. "He doesn't know his way down there." Rick cut her off. "He can manage. He's good at following orders. Aren't you, old man?" Daniel met his stare for a long, still moment. Then he nodded. "All right." The basement was cold, smelling of mildew and old wires. As he moved through the shadows, Daniel's hand brushed against a rusted shelf. Dust clung to his fingers. He found the breaker box and flipped the switch. The lights above hummed back to life. But as he turned to go, he noticed something else, a stack of invoices and boxes marked expired. He opened one. Inside were spoiled goods, mold creeping along the meat packaging. Another box leaked dark fluid. Health code violations, hidden away. He took a small photo with his phone, the flash cutting through the gloom. Then he closed the box quietly and returned upstairs. Rick was waiting. "Took you long enough." Daniel dried his hands on his apron. "Old building," he said evenly. "You should really check the basement." Rick frowned. "Why?" "Because some things down there might come back to haunt you." Rick sneered. "You threatening me, Dishwasher?" Daniel didn't answer. He just looked at him, calm, unreadable. That look made Rick's skin crawl. When Daniel turned away, Rick hissed, "You'll regret that." But Daniel knew it wasn't a threat. It was a confession. At 4 a.m., the last customers left. Clarissa was mopping near the door when she slipped. Rick laughed. Daniel crossed the floor in 2 steps and caught her before she fell. For a moment, their eyes met, the kind waitress and the quiet stranger, and something passed between them. Gratitude, recognition, maybe even faith. When she whispered, "Thank you," he simply said, "It's what any decent person would do." She smiled sadly. "Not around here." The storm eased just before dawn. Pale light crept through the blinds, painting silver lines across the diner floor. Rick stretched, yawning. "Finally, maybe now I can close up and get some sleep." Daniel removed his apron and folded it neatly on the counter. His hands were raw, skin cracked from hours in hot water. Rick smirked. "Leaving early, old man." "On time," Daniel said softly. He took a phone from his pocket, a sleek black device that didn't match the rest of him, and sent a single message. "Proceed." Outside, the sound of engines broke the morning quiet. 2 black cars pulled up to the curb, headlights cutting through the mist. Clarissa turned toward the window, confused. Lewis froze mid-wipe. Rick frowned. The diner door opened. 3 men in dark suits stepped in. They didn't speak right away. Their presence alone shifted the air. Rick straightened his tie, suddenly unsure. "Can I, help you gentlemen?" One of them glanced at Daniel. "Mr. Hartwell, everything ready, sir?" Every sound in the diner stopped. Even the neon hum seemed to vanish. Clarissa blinked. "Sir," she whispered. Daniel looked at her gently. "I think it's time you knew who's been washing your dishes." Rick's face drained of color. "Wait, Hartwell? As in Hartwell Industries?" Daniel nodded once. "The same. This diner is one of ours. Or at least it was supposed to be." Rick stumbled backward. This is a mistake. I didn't." Daniel's voice stayed calm. "You did, and so did I, for trusting people who forgot what this place was built for." The suited men handed him a folder. Inside were photos, basement boxes, falsified reports, complaints from employees that never reached corporate. Daniel laid the folder on the counter. I came here to see how people are treated when no one's watching. Now I've seen enough. Clarissa stood frozen, tears welling. Lewis let out a quiet Mater de Dios. Rick tried to speak, but his throat locked. Daniel turned toward him. You valued fear over respect, profit over people. That ends today. Then, to Clarissa, you, on the other hand, showed grace when no one asked you to. That's the kind of strength this place needs. She shook her head, overwhelmed. I was just doing what's right. And that, Daniel said softly, is exactly why you'll never have to worry here again. The next few hours unfolded like a slow-motion reckoning. Health inspectors arrived first, summoned quietly by Daniel's team. They moved through the diner with clipboards and cameras, documenting every hidden violation. Rick followed them helplessly, stammering excuses. Lewis watched from behind the grill, muttering, "About time." Clarissa tried to steady her hands as she poured coffee for the inspectors. Daniel sat at a booth near the window, reading through reports. For the first time, he looked tired, not from labor, but from disappointment. Rick approached, voice trembling. "Mr. Hartwell, so I didn't know you were coming. If I'd known." Daniel looked up. "Would you have been kinder if someone were watching?" Rick swallowed hard. "I just run things the way I was taught." "Then maybe you were taught wrong." Rick opened his mouth, but Daniel stopped him with a quiet gesture. "You have two choices. You can walk out with a little dignity left, or wait until the authorities escort you." Rick's face hardened, pride fighting panic. Then he grabbed his jacket and stormed toward the door. "You'll regret this," he spat. Daniel's gaze didn't waver. "No, Rick, you will." The door slammed. Silence fell again, heavy but clean, like air after a storm. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, light flooding across the empty parking lot. Clarissa approached cautiously. "What happens now?" Daniel turned to her. "Now we rebuild. Properly." He motioned to one of the suited men. "Get corporate on the line. I want every regional manager here by noon. This diner's becoming our new model." Lewis whistled low. "Model? For what?" "For how to treat people," Daniel said. "With respect, with fair pay, with humanity." Word spread quickly. By afternoon, a small crowd had gathered. Employees from nearby branches, local reporters, even a few regular customers. They whispered as Daniel stepped outside, sleeves still rolled up, hair damp from the earlier rain. He spoke without a microphone, but every word carried. "This diner has stood for 20 years. It's fed strangers, travelers, families, and friends. But somewhere along the way, it forgot its heart. I came here not to punish, but to remember." He gestured toward Clarissa. "People like her keep the world turning. They choose kindness when cruelty is easier, and they do it quietly every single day." Clarissa blinked back tears. Lewis clapped softly, others following until the diner was filled with applause that didn't sound forced. It sounded relieved. Daniel turned back toward the building. "From this day on, this place will stand for dignity. Everyone will earn enough to live. Everyone will be treated with respect, and anyone who forgets that doesn't belong here." It wasn't a speech for cameras. It was a promise. Later, when the inspectors left and the suits packed up, Clarissa found Daniel still sitting at the counter, staring into a mug of untouched coffee. "Thank you," she said quietly. He smiled faintly. "For what?" "For seeing us." Daniel looked around. The chipped tiles, the humming lights, the ghost of exhaustion that lingered in every corner. "Sometimes we forget that power isn't measured by how loud we speak," he said. "It's in how we listen." Weeks passed. The Silver Fork Diner changed, not just in paint and policy, but in spirit. The booths were repaired, and the kitchen was cleaned to shine. New equipment arrived. The paychecks got a little heavier, the hours fairer. Clarissa was promoted to general manager. She protested at first, saying she wasn't qualified, but Daniel only smiled. "You already are. You just needed someone to tell you." Lewis became head cook, training new hires with patience and pride. And Daniel, he visited often, but never as a boss. He'd sit at the counter, order coffee, and listen. The diner began attracting more people, families, workers, travelers. Laughter returned. Music from the old jukebox finally worked again. One evening, Clarissa found Daniel sitting in his usual spot, watching the sunset through the glass. "You could be anywhere," she said. "Why here?" He smiled. "Because this is where I remembered who I was." She nodded slowly. "You saved this place." "No," he said. "You did. I just reminded it of its worth." The lights flickered softly as the sky turned gold outside. For once, the air didn't smell of burnt coffee, but of hope. Power reveals itself in the quiet moments, in how we treat those who can't give us anything in return. I went looking for corruption. I found something else. Tired souls doing their best in a world that stopped rewarding goodness. Rick thought authority meant control, but real leadership is compassion under pressure. Clarissa taught me that kindness doesn't need applause. It just needs courage. The camera would linger on the diner sign, flickering back to life, letters glowing bright against the morning sky. Maybe the world doesn't need more billionaires. Maybe it needs more people who remember what it felt like to be small and choose kindness anyway. Because dignity isn't something you buy. It's something you give. Daniel stands outside, slipping his worn cap back on, watching Clarissa away from the doorway. So next time you see someone being humiliated for trying their best, ask yourself, when you see wrong, do you stay quiet or do you stand up